Hello.
Hey, Doc Ross.
Hey,
How you
how you doing?
doing? Pretty good. You?
Good, good. I seem to be hearing feedback. Might be on my end or your end.
I don't hear any feedback. Could be yours. Let me check.
It could
Mm.
be because there, I just
Oh,
found out.
okay, no, yeah, you sound better. There
Oh,
we
there
go.
we go.
All right. Um, okay. Let me look at chat real quick. See, make sure everyone. Verse. Hello. Okay. All right. Everything does seem to be working. Okay.
Alright, cool. Do you want me on camera
It's up
or
to you. If you're comfortable with that, that's perfect.
yeah, sure. Let me pop it up.
Okay. 1 second.
There we go.
All right.
Haha.
Perfect.
Terrible camera image.
Let me make sure everyone can see you. Move this. There you go. And then go straight to Discord. Perfect. There you go. Yo,
Yeah, we are.
Nick. Okay, we got Nick in chat. Okay, yep, there we go. Perfect. All right, so just to get people started and make sure that everyone knows what's up, today's stream is going to be kind of a relationship Q&A type stream. And so it's my first time doing something like this, so it's going to be pretty interesting. The topic of the day is relationships, as I said before. Um, so if anyone in the chat has questions for Dr. Ross, make sure to put them in there. Make sure not to make it offensive or anything. Um, and, just be polite for the guest. Okay, so just to start you off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, like your experience, stuff like that, why you enjoy your field, anything like, you're comfortable with sharing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I didn't even introduce myself. So I'm Dr. Ross Avilla. Scooch a little closer to the screen there. And I've been teaching a bunch of different classes around relationships. So personal relationships, intimate relationships, human sexuality, just general psychology courses for many years now. And what kind of got me into the field, I love psychology.
Hmm.
Since I was an undergrad, I kind of thought I wanted to be a counselor for a long time. And for the last minute,
Yeah, that's how I
switched.
started. I definitely get that feeling.
Yeah, I eventually reached that point where I was like, ooh, I really don't want to do counseling. Actually, this is really not fun for
Hmm.
me. And so then I got more into research, and relationships were just always something that interested me. Beyond that, I also studied prejudice and emotions and a bunch of other topics. It's just relationships has been more what I've been teaching about the last few years.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a little bit about my background. I have a doctorate from UC Davis. And so my research background when I got my doctorate was in prejudice and stereotyping around LGBT groups. But now I've
Hmm.
expanded to lots of different research topics.
Okay.
But I still like doing research on LGBT, sex education, that kind of stuff too.
All right. So what led you to pursue like the psychological field? What like made you like that, and what was the thought process of choosing the subsection of like relationships and stuff like that?
I think I was just always interested in psychology from an early age, even in high school. We
Hmm.
didn't have classes in psychology or anything like that, but it was something I was reading about. I remember the first psych book I ever got was Psychology for Dummies, and it like was studying on the course.
Yeah.
Really good book, actually.
Hmm.
And so I in undergrad, I just very first semester enrolled as a psychology major and didn't really think about doing much of anything else. And the classes always interested me. It was more just what I wanted to do in the field. That's what took me a long time to figure out.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, but psychology itself has just always interested me. I mean, it's how we think. It's
Hmm.
how humans perceive the world. So it's just that's an inherently interesting topic, I think.
Yeah, of course. So another question I had was like, what experience do you have in the field overall?
I mean, I've been teaching for 13 years now, and research. Um, I did some consulting work early on, sort of IO psychology is something else that I do, which is the psychology of work and business and leadership. But now I just teach. I've been writing a textbook the last few months,
Hmm.
and so yeah, publishing and that kind of thing.
Okay. Are you doing that as like a way to use it in your class, or is it just a overall textbook so many people can use it?
Well, both, I hope. I'm definitely going to use it in my class.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm writing a textbook on IO psychology because that's industrial organizational psychology,
Hmm.
because there just aren't any good textbooks out there for it. All the textbooks are at a graduate level.
Hmm.
So I want to make something that's more approachable, something that's hopefully more interesting and fun to read. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay. Sounds good. And so, what else do I have? Have you enjoyed your time in the field as like a psychologist?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, my whole job is just finding things that interest me and looking into them, doing research, teaching about it. So that's what keeps it fun is as long as it's something I'm interested in, I can pursue it and basically figure out what I like about it.
Sounds good. Okay. If you had any advice for people pursuing in a career similar to yours, what would you say?
Uh, Gosh, I guess I would say if you're interested in psychology, just take a bunch of classes, see what you like, see what's interesting to you, be open to wherever the path takes you because there are a ton of different jobs you can do with a degree in psychology. You
Hmm.
don't have to be a counselor, of course, that's one track. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where there's so much to explore that you just have to go out and explore all of it while you can.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So anyone in chat, if you have any questions for Dr. Ross, make sure to put them in so he can answer them. I'll make sure to relate to them. And yeah, I have a few questions of my own while everyone's thinking about their questions. And for one of
Sure.
my first questions, this is about the whole relationships thing, so we just start. Yeah. Okay, so what is something people neglect in relationships that causes them, like most of them, to fail?
Well, I mean, I think it's good to start with the place that, yeah, most relationships are going to fail.
Hmm.
Something like 80% of relationships don't last, and that's kind of totally fine. I think in large part, people should go into relationships not expecting them to necessarily last forever.
Hmm.
Sometimes they rarely do. But kind of going into relationships, going, what do I hope to get out of this? Do I want to grow as a person? Do I want someone to just go home to at the end of the night? Do I not? Am I lonely otherwise? Like kind of figuring out what the reason you want a relationship is important, and then finding someone else with those same kind of goals and values. Because that's probably one of the
Hmm.
number one ways that relationships fail is people want relationships for different reasons. One person might want sex and companionship
Hmm.
and a lot of romance. Another person might want kids and family and more stability.
Hmm.
And that probably wouldn't be a good match in that case.
Hmm. So it like based on how people like what their goals are for long term and whether they like share those goals is what you're kind of saying.
Yeah, totally. I think finding someone who wants the same kind of relationship that you do is super important.
Hmm. Okay. What are some of the more like important fact or like aspects in relationships that people tend to forget about?
Uh, well, I think some of the most important things in relationships that keep them stable is sort of being there for your partner in a positive way. I think a lot of people think about empathy as comforting partners. Um, oh, someone can't hear me well, maybe. I don't know if my mic's
Let
okay.
me make sure that let me look through the make sure to turn both of us up so they can hear us better. Talk real quick.
All right, this is me talking.
There we go.
Are
There
my
we go. I
levels
think that
good?
should be good. Let me turn myself down
Okay.
a little bit. Can y'all hear better? Just making sure that I don't, you know.
Nice. Okay.
All right, there we go. We got it.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, Marson. So basically, oh yeah, I was saying, a lot of people think about empathy as being all about comforting your partner when they're sad or when they're feeling negative emotions. But a really important part of empathy is amplifying someone's positive emotions. So
Hmm.
if you're having a good day, you want your partner to enjoy that with you and to basically amplify that. And that's a hugely important part of relationships. That's why we stick with them, because they make us feel better than if we weren't in them.
Of course.
And so I think being able to amplify the positive emotions in your relationship is a really important thing that
Hmm.
sometimes gets lost.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the most common like misconceptions about relationships that people tend to believe?
Oh man, so like relationship myths, that sort of thing. Uh, I guess that, well, a really common was like opposites attract. If people get in a relationship with someone who's totally different from them, that can be really intoxicating and kind of exotic and exciting at first. But those are the kind of relationships that tend to fizzle out really quick. Uh, oh, I like Nicholas's idea. I was curious if it'd be possible to program human emotions into a computer. That's really interesting. I love AI. Like
Mm.
AI is something I'm hugely interested in. It kind of makes me wish I could go back to school and respecialize in it because it's so interesting. I don't think computers are going to ever experience emotions like we do, but I also don't think they need to,
Hmm.
because I think emotions for humans is really just what drives behavior. Like we do something because we feel the need to do it. We eat because we're hungry, or we're lonely, so we seek companionship.
Hmm.
I think computers are going to have a much simpler drive system for the most part.
Oh yeah,
For
for
at this
sure.
point, computers do something as we tell them to, but even when computers are relatively autonomous, as they're starting to get to be, it's not like they're running on emotions.
Hmm.
It's more like they're running on whether what they just did was successful or failed. So I think
Hmm.
they're going to be much more success driven than emotion driven, which is probably going to be better than than us humans in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I definitely see that. I don't think that like AI would completely take over emotions like humans do, just because with us we have those emotions like regret, stuff like that. I don't think people would want that like intentionally in their like AI. If you have something like that, then you'd have like much more failures. Like unless they're trying to make like a new like race of human. I don't really see why they would want like disadvantages such as emotions and like something that is supposed to help us.
Yeah, and I think the second you create something intelligent that can also feel, then you've just created like a slave that you're making suffer for you. And that's like a
Yeah,
horrible
exactly.
ethical trap to fall into. So
Hmm.
it'd be probably good if we don't create emotions. I think if we told a computer to act like it had emotions, it could already be pretty darn convincing. But I
Hmm.
don't think it's feeling anything.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what's another one? What causes people to stick with a person that may cause them some sort of harm and abuse within the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it happens a lot. A lot of times people almost seem to seek out relationships with people who are abusive, right?
Hmm.
So I think that there's often multiple reasons for that. I think one of the biggest is that people who have come from a background of abuse will often almost seek that out in their partners. I mean, imagine if you have a parent who, we'll create a dark example, is physically violent.
Hmm.
Oftentimes as a kid, we interpret that like, oh, I love my parent. I know my parent loves me. This must be how they show love. Like they love me so much that they hit me when they're overwhelmed. That's like part of their passion. And you see people then take those abusive inducing kind of beliefs into their relationships where someone is abusive toward them. They think, oh, this is right. This is the way a relationship should be. This shows
Hmm.
that this person really cares about me. So in part, it can come down to expectations and patterns. And sometimes people could just have really low self-esteem where they think, this is what I deserve.
Hmm.
I'm with this person because no one else would stand to be with me.
Hmm.
Um, that's kind of a sad
It
example,
is.
but that happens a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean the truth hurts, and that's definitely the truth. Um, like happens so often, like it's left and right. I look, there's couples, but then you start hearing stories of, oh, they're toxic, and but I can't leave them because I love them because if I leave them I'll be alone, stuff like that. Like it's just people
Right.
are getting used to it. It's like becoming part of the everyday world, and it's just a big problem. And I wonder how people like would figure out a way to like counter that.
Well, I mean, like you said it perfectly, people just get used to it, and often abuse doesn't just start like that. It's sort of the slow build up. And so by the time it's happening, you've already acclimated to all the steps toward that. You've already acclimated to someone being more controlling, and then they're being more like they're calling you names and stuff like that. And eventually, when it gets to be violent, it's like that's just
Baba
one
Booey.
little level on top of what you've already gotten used to.
Mhm.
So I mean, there's some things that can happen. Is sometimes people will reach their breaking point, whatever that is. You see the same thing with addiction, where people are making terrible life choices for themselves, and then something happens where they just say, I can't do this anymore. And for
Yeah.
some people, it's their kids are endangered, or they've been nearly killed by their partner, and something wakes up in them that thinks, I have to change.
Hmm.
But short of that, it's often pretty hard to have someone break out of that cycle.
Yeah. I definitely see, or like sometimes you look at the news and then you see, oh, this couple happened. There was like a dispute between them, and then someone ends up dying just because one didn't do one thing that the other told him to do, and it becomes that whole. This is becoming normalized, and it's just I don't know. It's really difficult to see that happening so often, and like you try to like think of ways to counteract that, but it's all in the mind for most people. Like they aren't able to get out of it just because of how used to they are, and it just sucks. That's just the reality, though.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that a lot of people do get out of it,
Hmm.
and especially if they end up going to a therapist or a social worker or someone that can get them help. That there are a lot of good ways to mend that part and to sort of make yourself whole, so you don't keep falling into those kind of relationships. So there are a lot of good things people can do to help themselves. They just have to want to help themselves and
Hmm.
reach out.
Nick says also a lot of people see their partner as better than others see them.
Oh, for sure. That's a
Yeah,
great point.
definitely. I definitely get what he means. Um, Another question I had is, what is like the most interesting finding you have found in your research?
Hmm. Uh, Well, I just talk about my latest research. I was doing some research with someone who is now in a doctorate program, so hopefully we'll continue doing research
Hmm.
where we were looking at how LGBT people look up sexual health information online. Because most of the time when people have a question like, you know, I just slept with someone, we didn't use a condom, what should I do? Usually
Hmm.
they're going to turn to Google. Uh, and probably that's better than maybe turning to their friends or someone who probably doesn't know any better than they do. So we did in this research is we gave some, I think we had like 20 or 30 LGBT students,
Hmm.
and we gave them scenarios kind of like that. Like one was you had sex with this person who you thought, was I forget how we phrased it. Like you thought you were exclusive basically, and then you find out they've been sleeping with other people. Like, what should you do? How should you get tested? What should you look for? All that kind of stuff. So we give them a scenario and say, imagine you're this person. Use whatever online tools you want to like look up information that can help you.
Hmm.
So out of everyone that we had, 100% of them just went to Google. So that's the first place people go.
Yeah.
And most of them ended up searching basically just really how to put it, like really basic commands like had sex what now was what one person searched. I had sex what now.
It's so simple, yet they get their answer, I'm sure.
Well, a lot of them ended up getting websites that were just trying to sell them things.
Hmm. Money talks, yep.
Yeah, like Monkey Doc. So a lot of them were clicking on the first links that Google pops up, which are usually ads. Like usually if you look close, it says sponsored content.
Hmm.
I forget what we had. We had some people who clicked on. There were ads for some weird sex product. That was just one of the weirder ones that we got. And one thing we just realized is probably about 30% of them did know how to look up information pretty well. And especially one thing they would do is they would include their question and then include something like Planned Parenthood
Mhm.
or CDC or something like that in their search terms so that they were going to get a good source. And those same people didn't click on ad content. They knew better than that. And usually they went to a couple of different web sources, which is better than one. So we kind of figured that about 30% of people knew what they were doing and
Mhm.
70% of people didn't. And so I don't know how surprising that is, but it was interesting to go, oh, let's see if we can teach that 70% how to do a better job. So that's kind of what we're doing now is we're trying to create a really short, like 2 to 3 minute curriculum video kind of thing that says like, hey, if you want to look up sexual information online, here's how to do it.
Yeah.
And then to see if people can get better results with that.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where we're going. Hopefully, we can implement this in like high schools. I went to a conference over the summer with a bunch of high school and middle school sex ed teachers and presented this. And a lot of them were like, yes, we want to participate. So
Of course.
hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll get this
I,
off
I
the
feel like it,
ground. And
it, it definitely like help them out. For sure.
well,
How long have you been working on that research for?
that was mostly done last year. And like
Mhm.
I said, the student I was working with, Raven, she went off to a PhD program. And so I'm letting her have a year because she needs it to
Yeah,
like
for
to go
sure.
through classes. And then I said, hey, next year when she's going to have an independent project to work on next year, I suggested we do this. So
Mhm.
hopefully she'll want to continue with it.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
if not, I might grab some other people, maybe some students, to see if they can help me with it because I
Sounds
think
awesome.
that'd be a fun project.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, whenever like professors bring in like students to help them out, it's like pretty cool to see that they're actually, you know, getting people that are trying to get into it and like don't have like much, you know, experience, but it really helps, especially for resumes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of our job. I think it's one of the most important things is mentorship because I wouldn't be here if I didn't have good mentors back when
Oh
I
yeah,
was an
for sure.
undergrad.
hmm
Yeah.
Nicholas says, how often do you do research and or publish?
Yeah, so great question, Nicolicious. So love the name. So yeah, I would say with my job, so some professors have to publish a lot, like multiple things a year, so it becomes a huge part of their job. My job is probably about 90% teaching, 10% research. That's kind of the mix I like. But I probably publish maybe one thing, maybe two things a year. So I work at it, and then I have a couple of chapters in different textbooks, so that's what I've more pursued. And so now that I'm tackling a whole textbook, I think I probably will just work on the textbook for the next couple of years
Oh
because
yeah,
that's a
for sure.
huge project.
hmm
Yeah.
Is that like your first textbook that you've written, or have you written more beforehand?
No, this will be my first, or at
Oh,
least the
okay.
first where I'm doing the whole thing. So I've worked on textbooks with other people, like
hmm
contributing chapters and sections, but I've never done a whole one by myself. So
How the tables have
that's what
turned.
makes it a very big project.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, not bad. So how long do you think that'll take you just to even finish that textbook, considering how big it's gonna be, like the project?
Yeah, so I'm kind of trying to knock out a couple of chapters every break. So I
hmm
did get 2 chapters done this winter break, and then I have to do 2 or 3 during the summer and kind of bounce back and forth between winter and summer each time doing a couple. So I hopefully will have it done in 2 years is
hmm
kind of the time frame. By that point, I should have probably about 10 chapters done, and then it'll kind of be enough to publish it, and then I'll continue to add chapters probably for the next year until I get up
hmm
to about 15, 16 chapters. So in
Okay.
total, it'll probably take me uh, about 2 years, I would say.
So you're practically
Two to
gonna have
two to
like
three.
two editions. One is like the early version, and then the finished version.
Well, what I like to work with this textbook company, Top Hat. That's what I
hmm
use for all my
Of course,
classes.
I remember.
Yeah, yeah. So I like it because it's all online, and so we don't have an edition model. It's just every class gets the latest, whatever the textbook is up to at that moment. That's what they get.
hmm
And you can even update it mid-semester if something breaks and you want to include it. So it'll be not editions, but just like the up to the minute kind of thing with whatever version of the textbook students have.
hmm Okay. I do have a question about IO psychology. Moving on to
Yeah.
that for like a few seconds. So for IO psychology, when you talked about it during class, I do remember you talking about how boredom has to do with a lot of like with depression and mental health issues. I still
Hmm.
I'm wondering like why that is specifically boredom and how that contributes to the whole depression and I'm bored and I'm just gonna be depressed for a second, like why? Like how does that work?
Well, that's a big one. I think to take it a sort of a big macro view, humans aren't built to just be okay with being bored. Like if
Hmm.
you think about it from just a survival perspective, if we just sat around and we're like, "Yep, I'm good just sitting around, not doing anything. I'm fed, I'm happy, I can enjoy myself." We probably wouldn't have survived as a species for very long.
Yeah, for
So it's
sure.
like even in good times, we evolved to constantly be seeking more resources, better environments, better experiences. Um, Psychologists sometimes call that the hedonic treadmill, where no matter how happy you are, you just get adjusted to that level of happiness, and then you want the next level.
Hmm.
Or I shouldn't even say happiness, like whatever resources, experiences, whatever you have. Let's say you're making $50,000 a year, and at first you think it's amazing because you're like right out of college. You're like, oh my gosh, I can afford furniture for the first time in my life, and that's really exciting.
Yeah.
You get used to that really quickly, and then suddenly you're like, I want to make 75,000 because I want newer, better furniture and to go out more and to like go to expensive restaurants. And then you get there and you're like, nah, I want 100,000. Like you're never humans aren't meant to be satisfied
Hmm.
in a way. Um, and so that's probably why boredom itself is something that people really dislike. Now, I would say that probably in the modern age, we become even more uh, uh, hating boredom. I don't know the
Hmm.
word for it, like detesting boredom, because we don't actually experience it that often.
Hmm.
It's almost like we're not used to being bored anymore because we can use a device whenever we have even like a second of boredom. We
Yeah.
can use a device to try to get rid of that. So I think now when people are bored, it's almost excruciating because they're so not used to it. So it's
Hmm.
like you take a bad thing and you make it so that people are even more sensitive to it. Now, how that's related with depression, I don't know if it's necessarily like if you're bored a lot, you're going to get depressed.
Hmm.
I think it's maybe more that there are factors that contribute to experiencing distress with the boredom that also factor into depression. One of the things we talked about in class is how when people use their devices a lot, like phones, video games, Twitch streams, whatever,
Yep.
they get less tolerant of boredom. So they dislike being bored more. And yet actually the more they use their device, the more prone they get to boredom when they're not using the device. So they get really addicted to it.
Hmm.
And then because of that, they're going to start doing things like, not going out into the real world as often, not sort of having fulfilling experiences, not getting sleep because they're on their device all the time. And then those things are what probably lead more to like mental health issues down the road.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I think, yeah, I think it's all connected. It's not quite just this causes this kind of thing.
Hmm. That's very interesting that you say that. Um, Especially because there's so many factors that could play out, but it's the fact that they isolated specifically boredom to be like part of the whole depression thing is what confused me a little bit. Just because I feel like it couldn't just be boredom. It for sure had to be like other stuff, like you said a second ago. And yeah, no, I wonder why they specifically chose boredom or like how they like figured out that it could have been that or you know the possibility of that happening is 30%, I think it was.
Yeah, like I said, I think they're all interconnected. So I think you could totally look at boredom as one aspect of mental health.
Hmm.
Um, but also, there are ways to treat boredom, especially just there are ways to develop patience and mindfulness and gratitude practices and all this kind of positive psychology stuff that can help with boredom. And that also tends to help with depression as well. So
Hmm.
it is very interconnected.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so another question I have here is what are good ways to keep a relationship healthy?
Uh, Probably. one of the best ways is to keep oneself sort of mentally healthy. Like
Hmm.
if you are yourself a happy, satisfied, fulfilled person, then it's much easier to have a good relationship.
Hmm.
Um, it's almost like it's really difficult to have a good relationship if you're not happy yourself. And I think a lot of people kind of turn to relationships to maybe try to fix themselves or make themselves happier, and that's really just not a good tactic. Like
Yeah.
relationships won't actually make people happier. It's an added layer of maybe meaning to their life, but not really like happiness.
Hmm.
They certainly don't make life less stressful or anything like that. So
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
sort of taking care of yourself is probably one of the best ways to then have a fulfilling relationship on top of an already fulfilling life.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely see that, and it's like really common nowadays. People just run into relationships hoping they'll be happy again, but then it turns out bad, and then they're like realizing what went wrong, and then you can't love someone if you don't love yourself. That's like going into the store without knowing what you're gonna get. You're just gonna get something random, and you're not gonna be happy with it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's kind of like well, I remember one of my favorite studies on this is one where they just randomly had people. It's like they had a little app on their phone, and they did this with thousands of people. And at random points throughout the week, they would just ding them, and be like, "How happy are you at
Hmm.
this very moment on a scale of 1 to 10?" And they asked them some other questions, but one of the things they noticed is that single people were no less happy than people who are in relationships. So
Hmm.
that right there surprised a lot of people. That actually, if you're single or married or in a relationship, it makes no difference on your happiness. But what was funny is that for, I think it was like 90, 85, 90% of people in relationships, if they were with their partner at that moment when they got that little ding on their phone, then they actually rated themselves as less happy than if they weren't with their partner at that moment. Like
Hmm.
basically, most people in relationships actually reported being less happy when they were with their partner.
Oh wow.
And for the most part, these are people who are in what they would think is good relationships. They're people who say, oh, yeah, I'm in love, I'm happy, I'm satisfied. Yet when you look at the data, they're actually happier not being with their partner. But the 10 to 15% of people who didn't show that negative effect
Hmm.
were people who rated their relationship as like the most satisfying. Like they're in the 90th percentile in terms of relationship quality.
Hmm.
So it's almost like you have to have an amazing relationship to just be as happy as you would be without a relationship.
Yeah,
It's
for
one way
sure.
to put it. Because relationships, carry with them stress and all this sort of stuff. So in a way, it's what makes you happy is yourself at the
Hmm.
end of the day, much more than who you're with.
Yeah, and the thing that surprised me when you told me that is I wonder if the people during the surveys ever lie. Like, what are the odds of people just lying the entire time?
Well, if anything, I would think people would lie the other way around.
Hmm.
That if they're getting this ding on their phone, you'd be like, "Oh, I'm with my partner, so I must be really happy." But of course, that's not what we found. So and also I think lying is one of those things where if you have enough people in your data set, this was a data set of like 1,000 people, then the few people who might be lying don't really have much of an effect.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, hey, Honeybee. If any of you in the chat have any questions for Dr. Ross about relationships, anything like that, make sure to ask. He knows what he's talking about. I'm over here flabbergasted because like a lot of this stuff I like don't even realize, and like the more you hear about it, the more you're like, damn, this is reality, and it's kind of difficult to know about it until you hear it from another person, from another perspective at least.
Yeah, just to throw some out there, one of the things I kind of want to do after I write this textbook, so like 2 or 3 years from now, is I would love to do a class on the psychology of, I don't know what to call it, but it'd be something like the psychology of religion and spirituality, but from a very like evolutionarily grounded way. Like, why did humans evolve to want religion and believe in supernatural things and all this kind of stuff? Because that's something I've been interested in for at least 15 years now.
Hmm.
I read a bunch of books about sort of how religions develop and how cults develop, and so much of it is rooted in really interesting psychology.
Hmm.
So it's a really interesting way to understand the self, is to understand why people have this sort of persistent belief in the supernatural, just as a part of our everyday lives. I think it's so interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So if anyone has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer that too. I wrote one section of a book. It's actually published over in the UK that was about near-death experiences. So
Oh,
that
wow.
was a really fun topic to dig into. It's like what goes on in the brain when suddenly you don't have enough oxygen going to your brainstem. Like what creates these like really interesting near-death experiences?
Yeah.
Uh,
Now I'm really curious because I'd like never even thought about that. Like, what are you thinking in the moments before you're actually gonna die? But and then you don't end up dying, and then like you don't remember what you were thinking. Or some people don't
well,
remember, but
what's
I feel
so
like majority of
interesting is
people do.
yeah, usually people have vivid experiences that just get ingrained in their brain that they remember for the rest of their lives,
Hmm.
and we can really see why chemically why that's happening in the brain. Uh, it's it's just this really interesting thing the brain does once it's dying, once it sort of is starting to shut down. Almost in the death throes, it becomes hyperactive in all these really interesting ways.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, people have all these crazy hallucinations. What's so fascinating though, near-death experiences always match culturally what people expect to have happen after they die.
Hmm.
So in the West, it's very much pearly gates and a bright light and going to heaven and
Yeah.
all that stuff. But there are places like in Africa where people have near-death experiences, and suddenly they're riding this giant galactic turtle through space, and like, it kind of matches whatever their religious ideas are.
Hmm.
And so that's an interesting aspect is what triggers that, what's the mix between the chemicals that are going on in your brain and the culture that you're raised in to create that really wild experience. So I've always wanted to have a near death experience. We'll see if I'm lucky enough to have one at some
Oh
point in my life and
gosh.
come back to
Hopefully
know
it's
that I
near
had
death and
one.
not actual death, because
Right.
death kills you. You don't want that. But yeah,
I've heard
no,
that the
that's
the
definitely
most
interesting.
reliable way to have a near death experience is to do open heart surgery. So here's
Oh
hoping I can do
wow.
that one day.
Hopefully you wouldn't have to like need it, but if you ever do, then hopefully you get the
Right.
experience you wanted. Might as well.
Hopefully it happens very late in life and it's great.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can finally get
You're over here saying, "Oh God, it's the pearly gates," or whatever you
right. Who knows?
believe in. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Um, but yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. Especially like you'd think like most people would imagine it the same, but it's all about perspective.
Yeah, it's while your brain is firing like crazy, what's sort of in there to be activated is very interesting.
Hmm.
There are certain drugs that can do it too. I'm not brave enough to try them, but ketamine is known to
Oh
cause
gosh.
out of body experiences.
Yeah.
There's sort of these cocktails people have
I've heard
tried in
salvia
the
does
lab.
stuff like that, and it like lasts 5 minutes, but like people live a whole lifetime just within those 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's crazy
Yeah, I
to
don't
think
know much
about.
about the chemical effects of it, but yeah, I've seen videos of people on salvia and it looks crazy.
It looks scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I used to watch videos of people like talking about their experience with certain drugs to like figure out like why do people take these, and you just hear them talk about like, oh, this was like the scariest experience I've ever had. I met the devil. I saw this. I saw that. Oh, I saw a freaking I saw a turtle flying through space.
Yeah.
Stuff like
And they
that,
can't wait to do it again.
Some people are like, oh yeah, Nick says PCP. I'm not sure what like if what PCP does, but I'm sure it probably does the same.
Yeah, it's just speed, right? So PCP is like a methamphetamine,
Oh,
so
okay.
it would
So like
hyperactivates
hallucinogen.
everything. I don't think PCP is much of a hallucinogen. Anything can be an hallucinogen if you take too much of it, probably. But
For
I think
sure.
PCP probably just gives people a lot of energy and confidence and strength and crazy. It's almost like a super hit of aggression and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, me playing Fallout, just taking some whatever that jet,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
taking some
that.
jet. But yeah, no, definitely. That's crazy. Like the whole hallucinogenic drugs being like legalized in certain places like Oregon, and then them
Mhm.
having problems with it because of the legalization. It's kind of ridiculous, but I wonder how it's working out for them now because I haven't really looked into it since then.
Yeah, I don't know if any states have actually legalized hallucinogens for the most part. There's some that are allowing to be used more in research. There's some evidence. I don't know how much I trust it yet because it's pretty new, but
Hmm.
that things like ketamine and psilocybin, which is like magic mushroom kind of stuff, that those can help treat depression.
Hmm.
Um, from what I've read, they're pretty short-term effects. Like you take it and you're good for like a couple of weeks.
Hmm.
And so I don't know how. I guess that's an okay treatment, but then you have to actually take it, under a doctor's supervision, and it takes all day, and
Yeah,
in
like
the end, I
people
don't
could
know
be.
how much that's gonna help people.
Hmm. Yeah, people could be like needing saving, but this doctor's too busy watching this person because they're in the middle of high. It could be like a really big
Right.
problem, especially if they're understaffed.
Right. Yeah, it's super expensive to pay staff to just babysit you while you're tripping balls, and I don't. It doesn't seem that practical of a way to treat depression. But if it helps some people with treatment-resistant depression, then sure. If it's the only thing that helps some people, so we're kind of figuring out. I think first we need to figure out why it would even help people, and then maybe figure out a better way to do that. That's not going to be so time intensive and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. Never like really looked into too many drugs, just like certain ones like mushrooms, like acid. I used to like watch videos on like how like what cartels do, like it's just that random like, oh, I'm so curious about this just because I keep seeing it on my feed on YouTube, and I've watched a lot of like Vice like videos on them, and yeah, Vice is
Oh,
really good when
interesting.
it comes to like documentaries on drugs and stuff, cartels, all that.
They do really interesting stuff.
Hmm.
I show some Vice videos in my classes.
Hmm.
One is about in my human sexuality class. There's a great Vice video about, I think it's in Colombia, where in lots of rural areas in South America, it's really common for people to have sex with donkeys, basically.
Oh, wow.
And Vice did a whole report on it. They found people who were like, "Yeah, of course I have sex with donkeys," and like,
Oh
well,
gosh.
and people are very upfront with it out there.
Hmm.
It is a very interesting. I mean, it's always a fun one to play for students because
Oh
it's kind
yeah.
of mind blowing. It's just it's part of the culture.
I could just imagine like half the class just laughing at it, just like
Oh
what,
yeah,
flabbergasted.
yeah. Yeah, once they have there's this one part where they're interviewing a bunch of teenagers, and they're like young, they're like 13, 14, 15 years old.
Hmm.
And they're all like, "Oh yeah, we're all having sex with donkeys." Oh, that guy does it the most. He's really good at it. And everything. Like they know just a lot about it.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
it's
So
pretty funny.
gotta love Vice reports.
Yeah, Vice does some of the funniest. Like sometimes it's like some of the most serious, some of the most unhinged. You never know what you're gonna get with the Vice video.
Yeah, it's always going to be interesting.
Yeah, I saw a video of like this honey that's made up in the mountains by these bees, and they pollinate these certain, or like they get pollen from certain flowers that have this psychedelic effect, and they kind of
Oh,
put it into the honey, so the honey's really rare because it's up in the mountains and it's difficult to get, it's dangerous. And yeah, people like eat this for medicine. They use medicines for like just to
wow,
have
that's
it.
cool.
Like even children take it. I'm pretty sure they just don't take it like too much of it because it can kill you, of course. But
Oh wow.
but yeah, it's supposed to give you the psychedelic effect, and it's pretty interesting. Like I never heard of it until I saw that Vice like documentary about it.
That reminds me, a student came up and asked me about royal honey. And she's like, "There's all these commercials for royal honey on TikTok." And I'd seen some too. They're all
Hmm.
about, things like increase your vitality and increase your sexual stamina, get royal honey. And so we looked it up, and what we what we found out was that the FDA had recently found that what royal honey was there's this company, I think out of Mexico, where they were taking just honey and they were grinding up Cialis, like
Oh.
the erectile dysfunction pills, and putting that in honey, selling it at like corner stores and things like that. Not on, so
They
we're
really out
like,
here
yeah,
selling
that will
selling
help.
honey Viagra.
That's literally it because
Honey
it's so
Viagra
cheap
is
now.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, people
So
don't
they
just don't
they
want to take the straight pill.
What I think it's, you have to have a prescription to take the pill normally. So
Hmm.
they were finding a way around that, and apparently they hadn't been caught for a long time. So they were finally caught. So we figured out what royal honey was and why it was indeed effective, although it's kind of dangerous because it can have effects on your heart if you take too much and all that
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I never even heard of that until now. See, there's stuff
Hmm.
like this all over the world, and you just don't hear about it until like someone brings it up. It's pretty hilarious sometimes.
Yeah, it's wild what even gets through in the United States. You know,
Oh
we're
yeah, for
we're
sure.
not the most regulated when it especially comes to food. Food is like almost not at all regulated.
Hmm. Yeah, no, like I've been seeing like videos of people like making this rotten meat that's supposed to give you like a high, and
Oh my
people
God.
are like eating
Oh,
it, and it's like enough to
wow.
kill you. And like botulism stuff like exists, and people don't think about it. They just want that high that people say that you can get from it, and people don't think twice before like putting something in their mouth that they don't know like what it is. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot about what's it called? It's a type of silver that you ingest. I forget what they call this.
Um.
I'll have to look it up real quick. It's this type of thing that they're putting out on a lot of health websites that you're supposed to see silver that you drink. Colloidal silver, that's what it's called.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard of that, but I don't know like what it was.
Well, there's all these ads for colloidal silver, and basically it's just silver that's been put in a solution so you can drink it, but it's like terrible for you. It's
Hmm.
terrible for your liver, your kidneys. You know, it's a heavy metal that doesn't leave your body. And so there are these people who are getting it from health food stores or online, and they're taking so much of it that they were literally turning blue, like silvery,
Hmm.
and dying
Oh
from it.
wow.
So,
I
and
mean,
it's not regulated. You can still buy it because
wow.
it's, one of those things where it's like, hey,
You'd think the
in
FDA
small
would like
doses
crack
it
down
won't
on that,
kill
but
you.
apparently not.
Yeah, I don't know if they are cracking on it. It was a big thing, especially during look it up, colloidal. But basically, it was a big thing during COVID because a lot of people were like, oh, take this and whatever other like ivermectin or whatever people believed in
Hmm.
uh, would treat COVID. And you see, is it still available? Write that colloidal silver. It is, yeah,
Oh
you can still
wow.
get it.
No way. Buy it on
Despite
Amazon.
safety concerns and warning from the FDA, colloidal silver is still available in dietary supplements and topical products. So,
Yeah, like Nick says, you would think that drinking silver isn't great.
right. People used to ingest mercury
Yeah,
maybe
I was literally
100
about to
years ago.
bring that up. I was about to say, wasn't there like
Yeah.
a emperor that would take mercury tablets and then ended up dying? Isn't that literally just the same thing?
Yeah, well, Abraham Lincoln took quicksilver tablets, which was mercury, to treat his depression, and
Abraham
it
Lincoln was built
probably ended up
different.
making his depression even worse.
It took the bullet to kill him, not the freaking mercury. He was just built different.
Yeah. Yeah. Him and his wife took a lot of mercury in their
Wow.
lifetimes, and they both had like a lot of physical and mental disabilities later in life. So
Oof.
probably
Yeah,
that was part of it.
that's pretty crazy. I didn't even know Abraham Lincoln did that.
Yeah,
I do know
it's
that I
crazy.
think it was George Washington's wife that died from like milkweed poisoning or something. Just
Oh,
random
I don't know
weed
that one.
too. I
Oh,
think it
interesting.
was that. Let me make sure. I don't want to spread misinformation. How did George Washington's wife die?
Yeah,
Okay, wife.
all I'm seeing is she died from a fever.
Okay, yeah, fever. No, there was specifically one person that like died from a certain plant. I forgot what it was. It was like milkweed or something. I don't know if it was milkweed, but I don't know. I do not know where I heard that, but I heard it somewhere, and I'll like remember it at some point, hopefully. But yeah, for sure.
Oh, Abraham Lincoln's mother
Oh, there we go,
was
there
married.
we go. Yeah, I knew it was someone like one of the first few presidents. I just didn't know which one. His mother died from milkweed poisoning.
Maybe. Well, she died from something called milk sickness. Who knows what that is?
Yeah, I think that's what
Oh yeah,
happened from.
it's from milkweed. Yep,
Yeah, okay,
it
I was
is.
right. Okay, no misinformation
Yeah,
here. The only part that I got wrong was who it was
wrong president.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, you there's like a lot of these things that people just find and then they're like, oh look, it looks shiny. Let me drink it real quick. And it's Like,
No, I know
why? If it's shiny, it's probably not a good idea to ingest it, especially if it's not meant to be. Like, if it's not formed in your body, it probably shouldn't be in there for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, anything you find at a health food store, be aware of it. Anything
Hmm.
that's, homeopathic or, I don't know what you call it, a natural cure, most of that
Oh
stuff
yeah,
is
the
not going to
cure-alls,
do anything for you
snake
at best.
oils, all that stuff from like back then. They're
Exactly.
just bringing that back with misinformation. Much more
Yeah.
misinformation nowadays, though.
I remember when my son was 1 years old, I looked for a cough medicine, like an over the counter cough medicine for him. And I didn't realize that for a kid that young, there really just isn't anything available because that would
Hmm.
be maybe dangerous or something. You need a prescription for it. But all these cough medicines come up on Amazon or at Rayleigh's or supermarkets, but they all say homeopathic cough medicine, which is short for there's nothing in this. There's no medicine in this.
So, so they're literally just selling a sugar pill, a placebo.
Yeah. Well, homeopathy is where you take an active ingredient and then you dilute it so much that there's nothing left. And that's what homeopathy is.
If that's the
Uh,
case, why are people selling it? At that,
it's People think it's a thing. People think it's real.
hmm.
I
Yeah.
remember was an article on it where they said the homeopathic potency for most products is if you took one aspirin and plopped it into Lake Tahoe and then you mixed it until it was, totally spread out and then took a teaspoon from the lake and drank it.
Oh.
That's how diluted it is.
Oh.
It's just water at the end of the day. That's all it is.
No way. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's in that case, I people are just getting scammed and people just don't realize it.
Oh yeah.
I'll definitely be
Yeah.
looking out for that whenever I have a kid, if I have one, for sure. I don't want
Yeah,
to.
you're better off just doing nothing.
Yeah, or just go to a doctor and like ask them what's wrong and maybe find a way to like soothe whatever could be happening. Maybe tea, maybe something else. You know,
Exactly.
something natural that probably won't like you won't spend your money on.
Right. Exactly.
Hmm. But yeah, no, definitely. This is some interesting stuff, especially like the whole people. Like Nick says, there's got to be something happening in the brain where we say something or see something shiny and we have the urge to consume it, for sure.
Yeah, I think we humans definitely evolved to try everything. We are like one of the most omnivorous creatures. There's almost nothing that humans won't eat
Hmm.
or didn't evolve to eat. So we're a very adventurous species when it comes to ingesting things.
And in some ways, in more ways than one, actually, not in a good way. Because well, I mean, then again, that's how we find out what's edible, what's not edible, for the most part.
Right. I mean, yeah. My motto is let someone else try it for you.
Literally, just so you know it's safe.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Hmm. Okay, so I did search up the whole the bee thing that I was talking about earlier.
Mhm.
So like the bee stuff is called Himalayan giant, or it comes from the Himalayan giant honeybees, and it says here that the reason why like it happens is because of the plant that they get it from is a psychedelic one, and once they get all that pollen, it just starts spreading into the honey, and it just becomes this honey that causes people to have hallucinations, have like this sense of euphoria and all that. And it's pretty
Oh,
crazy,
interesting.
like how even in nature stuff like this like comes up. It's
Oh yeah.
definitely
I mean, a
interesting.
lot of animals will eat fruit after it's fermented to get drunk, basically. That's super common in a lot of animals. So we're not the only species that enjoys those kind of feelings.
It's yeah, especially with the dolphins and the pufferfish and throwing them, passing it
Oh
around
yeah,
like a like a joint.
puff puff
It's funny.
pass.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty crazy how even animals that have nothing to do with humans do it too.
Mhm. Mhm.
It just goes to show the ingenuity of animals.
Right. And how well at the end of the day, that's what we are. We are animals.
Yep. Literally, we all come from the same tree, kind of.
Mm. Yeah, no, very true. It's if you look at the, I was just watching a video about this the other day. If you look at the skeletons and brains of dolphins, they are like remarkably similar to humans.
Mhm.
And that's not because we have some weird link. It's just all mammals are remarkably similar.
Yeah, for sure.
Even
So
ones that seem dissimilar.
the actual name of the honey is called mad honey. It says right here it is sought after by or for some of its medicinal properties. Although eating large quantities can cause dizziness, hallucinations, nausea, and a range of cardiac effects, literally can kill you.
Yeah, and you can just apparently get it off Amazon too,
Yeah. Wait, the high honey's on Amazon?
or the mad. It's called
The mad
Himalayan
honey?
mad honey. Yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy. They actually sell that?
you probably have to ingest a lot of it. I'm guessing to like get any kind of effect.
Yeah, no, it'd probably be like that. Anyways, yeah, I do have one more thing right here. It's harvested from the nests of several species of honey, including the Himalayan cliff honeybees, the largest honeybee in the world, and is considered to be an aphrodisiac among other things. For this reason, it is particularly popular among middle-aged men suffering from sexual performance issues.
Oh,
That makes more sense. That's understandable.
I mean, you should just get some of that Cialis spiked royal honey.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so okay, back to the whole relationship stuff. I do have one more question myself. Oh,
Hmm.
Nick said probably boil it and extra specific parts with cough syrup. Extract specific parts like with cough syrup.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true. You
Yeah.
probably could do that if you knew what parts you were looking for, or how to extract it.
Yeah, but I feel like it'd probably condense it and make it even more dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, because I feel like if you boil like any kind of like really strong medicine, it's just gonna condense it and become this dense form of mass that probably kill you within a few drops. But yeah, as for the question, what are some tools or methods to keep a relationship interesting?
Oh, I think there's lots of things that spice up relationships. I think one of the things that couples can do is just talk about things that they want to be adventurous about, whatever that is. You know, going on trips, trying out new things in the bedroom, you know, throwing in just interesting experiences, always a good thing for couples to share.
Hmm.
I don't think there's anything mystical about it. I think it's mostly people being willing to do new adventurous things with their partner is what's going to keep that relationship interesting in the long run.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Okay. So, do any of you in the chat have any questions for Dr. Avila? Any of you? I've exhausted all my questions. We did almost hit
Yeah,
that
this is
1 hour
probably
mark, so which is pretty good.
yeah, as I say, it's probably a good time for me to duck out if no one else has any questions. I would say this has been a fun experience. Thanks for having me on your stream and everything.
Yeah, no
I hope
problem.
people enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you for coming. I'm sure you answered questions for a lot of people.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Okay. My mouse refuses to turn on. 1 second. There you go. Fix it. All right. Well, doesn't seem like anyone has questions. Um. Well. Yep. We got Nick saying thank you, Dr. Avila.
Yeah, absolutely. Good talk with you guys.
Baba Booey.
Yep. I'm sure you know Nick from class.
Yeah, what's the last name? I probably do. Or maybe you don't want to dox yourself on
Yeah.
stream. Sorry.
You said your class was really fun. I recommended it to everyone I know. I was
Oh,
one of the
thanks.
people he recommended, like me to you. So that's
Oh,
why I know
nice.
you now.
Right on. Oh, cool. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, all right. Well, I just want to thank you very much for coming on. Definitely was a fun little podcast kind of style of stream. And yeah, maybe some other time we could do like another one, but just a different topic for the fun of it.
Okay.
All right,
Sounds good.
sounds
All
good.
right. Well, you all have a good night.
You too. All right,
Bye.
I'll have to see you on and during class within the next few
Okay.
weeks. All right, well, catch you
All right.
later.
Cool.
Bye
Bye.
bye. All right. I'd say that was pretty successful. Not even gonna lie. What do y'all think? That was a pretty good one. Well, thank you to Dr. Avila for coming here. Um, Definitely a really fun stream. It was my first time doing anything like this, so it was really it was really interesting. Let me do this. There you go. Anyways, yeah, that should be all for today's stream. It was an hour long, but it was definitely a good one for sure. Um, I definitely hope to catch y'all possibly tomorrow to play a Mori. I'll make sure to let y'all know about that. Um, if not tomorrow, then the next day. And yeah, well, I'll catch y'all next time. Thank y'all for coming by. Thank y'all for being respectable to Dr. Avila. And I'll catch you tomorrow. Can't wait to be banned. Yes, sir. Don't worry, Nick. Look at channel points. Look what it says on it. I changed it from Nick Alicious and Calvin to. I'll let you read it. No, it's not random. It's every man for themselves. You choose who it is. So you get to choose who you freaking time out for 5 minutes. That's gonna be pretty funny. Oh, yeah, yeah. Anyways, yeah, y'all are gonna have a little war next time y'all see each other. It's gonna be pretty funny. Oh, and by the way, I hope y'all like the whole stream avatar thing. You can change it if you press the SA button, and yeah, it's a pretty cool thing that I got. I hope y'all enjoyed that too. Definitely worth the money. All right, well, I think that should be it for today's stream. I'll catch y'all by tomorrow. Anyways, bye bye.